Hey guys, I'm just going to make this quick little video for everyone um, as we're getting into sort of thinking about Edge of the Empire. This is your core rule book. I highly recommend you go through this section right here. If you just open it up in Acrobat Reader, you should be able to see all these bookmarks on the side. I recommend going through, at least skimming through most of this stuff. It'll tell you about your dice pools and everything because it is quite a bit different than what we're used to. I'm going to be going through the second chapter though, which is character creation, because it is a bit confusing at first. At least it was for me, and I know it is for Isaiah. So, character background, it gives you some different bases you can choose, but I wouldn't worry too much about that as long as you make your own background. Middle class, outsider. Pretty much why are you becoming this sort of outlaw or whatever you're choosing to be. Obligation is a little bit more important because it actually can have an effect in gameplay, and this is sort of like who you owe your allegiance to in a way, or it can be different things, duty or you know part of a family or whatever. But do check this out because it'll have an effect in different sort of aspects of the game. But when we actually get to creating a character, it starts with your species, career, and specializations. So your species, you've got obviously a bunch of species in here. You've got Bothans, droids, Gons, humans, and some others. But there's plenty more in official source books that you can check out that we'll probably have up on the Discord. Matt already posted something about the dozens and dozens of species that you can choose from. And what's important when you're looking at the species is sort of the stat block here. Let's see, who is this for? This is for humans. Wound, this is sort of what you'll be looking at when you choose your species. So you've got all your core stats, which humans are obviously pretty basic. You've got your wound threshold, which is your damage. You've got your strain threshold, which is like mental damage. Starting XP, which is going to determine how many things you can purchase at the beginning of the game, and you've got any sort of special abilities that come along with that species. Yeah, there's a bunch in this book. This is the Edge of the Empire core rulebook. There's also the Age of Rebellion core rulebook and the Force and Destiny core rulebook. They all have the same game like behind it mechanic wise. Like you can still play the same game with all of them. They just have different flavor to them. So Age of Rebellion will have more rebellion focused careers and species, whereas Force and Destiny will have more Jedi related uh, species and careers. Now, when choosing your career, and along with it a specialty or a specialization, uh, first of all, the career is sort of the main overarching thing, which like would be a bounty hunter, a colonist, explorer, hired gun, that sort of thing. But each career has three of these sort of skill trees that you can go down, and these are the specializations. So for the bounty hunter, for instance, you have the assassin specialization, you have the gadgeteer specialization, and you have the survivalist specialization. And these all have different, essentially perks that you can buy with XP as you level up and stuff like that. And they all kind of have their own flavor to them, but they fit under, the bounty hunter or the hired gun. They all have their own careers, but different skill trees in such careers. Um, Next, it has investing experience points, which this is where I want to say this is where it veers most from for sort of D&D where we have experience, because in this you don't necessarily level up in the traditional sense where you gain a level and you gain benefits with that level. Instead, you get XP and you can spend that XP however you like. If you'll remember back in the species, it showed a starting XP, and that's how much XP you can spend at the beginning of the game. So a couple of different things that you can do with your XP, at least when you're creating your character, is improve your characteristics, you can train skills, and you can purchase talents. Um, Characteristics are your main stats. It's like your brawn, agility, stuff like that. Skill training is your training in individual skills like heavy weapons, light weapons, piloting, stuff like that. And then talents are your skill trees that you picked with your specializations, that sort of like the perks that you can buy with XP as well. So when you start off making your character, you will be spending your starting XP into any of these categories. Um, and you can read about how much exactly it takes for each sort of thing, um, how much XP is required for, say, boosting a characteristic versus training a skill, stuff like that. Your derived attributes obviously are derived from your characteristics and other such things. It's your wound threshold, your strain threshold. You'll notice back at the species list, it'll say your wound threshold is 10 plus your brawn, because if you spend any of your starting XP to increase your brawn, then your wound threshold will reflect that starting off. Um, Same with your strain threshold and soak value. Um, Soak value essentially is just a number which is subtracted from any damage you take. It's essentially for you tanky characters you want a high soak value, and then defense is how hard it is to actually hit you, and your armor, depending on what armor you have, you'll get more defense or more soak value. Um, but that's the main difference between the two, is that soak just detracts from the overall damage you take, and then defense makes it harder to hit you with actual attacks itself. Motivations, once again, it has some suggestions for motivations, but do what you will with those. Gear and appearance. So obviously you start out with a certain amount of credits. I believe it's 500 credits that you can spend on whatever you want in weapons or whatever. Besides that, I will be doing a short video where I actually build a character from scratch, just so you can see sort of what the process looks like. I will note the Force. Edge of the Empire is obviously like smugglers and sort of like outlaws or sort of vigilantes type things, so there's not necessarily any Jedi in this book, but there is sort of a Force-sensitive option, which is taken as a secondary career and specialization. So you can spend your XP. One other thing you can spend your XP on is different careers and different specializations, and one of those happens to be Force sensitive. So you can get some Force abilities and stuff like that if you're willing to put in the extra XP towards them. But if you are looking to be like a Jedi character, then I would recommend looking at the Force and Destiny core rulebook, because that has your rules for all different sorts of Jedi characters, not just a sensitive exile as it is here. You can be an actual Jedi Knight or whatever. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be doing a quick character creation guide. That way you guys can see what it's like. Yeah, I recommend just checking out the core rulebook and sort of scrolling through these bookmarks and seeing what you can find, and yeah, have at it.